So what are the strategies? So now I have scared you enough. So let's talk about what can we do, what kind of mitigation strategies we have. And well, one of the things is reducing consumption in high-income countries have to be part of the conversation, because globally we are consuming 90% more than the optimal amount for animal source food, particularly for meat. So there has to be a discussion in countries where there is overconsumption to reduce that amount. It doesn't happen everywhere. If we compare high-income countries, for example, that have about 70 kilograms of meat consumption per capita, and you have in sub-Saharan Africa, that number is 10. So there is huge disparity there. So in some communities, there actually need to be increased consumption, but in a lot of communities, we need to reduce particularly the processed meat consumption need to be reduced by about 90%. So that is one of the ways that we can reduce the emissions. But again, the reality is that the demand for meat and the demand for dairy products is actually increasing. Particularly in low-income countries, the demand is increasing, and therefore, when we're trying to meet this increasing demand, what kind of strategies do we have? So we have to implement strategies in order to make sure that the way that we are increasing productivity to meet this demand is in a much more sustainable manner than it has been before. And so we did some work, which was published last year, and we identified strategies, about 3 main strategies that are product-based or they are intensity-based. So what I mean by intensity is that emissions per kilogram of meat, emissions per kilogram of milk. And then we also identified about 5 absolute reductions. So these are reductions in the absolute amount of methane, so that's gram per day or gram per kilogram of intake. And the ones that work really well with the intensity-based are increasing the feeding level. So this is mostly in low-income countries where there's a lot of room to play to increase the amount of energy provided to the animals, and then you reduce emissions per kilogram of product that is produced. Again, for grazing conditions, looking at the grass maturity and looking at the nutrient profile of grass would also help reduce emissions. And then looking at the dietary forage to concentrate ratio would also help in reducing emissions. So this is mostly in product-based, while in absolute reductions, we have inhibitors, we have secondary plant compounds, electron sinks, and oils and fats. So I will go through some of those mitigation strategies in more detail than others, but let's start with the product-based solutions. So this is a nice figure to see that the average milk yield in dairy cattle really started to take off around 1950s or so. So it was just going along, very little improvements, but then in 1950 something happened. There are 2 things that happened there. One is the AI, which is the artificial insemination, and then the nutrient requirements also. To the first nutrient requirement was published as well. So a combination of the genetic gains, the ability to have quick selection and quick breeding for improvement, compare with that included with the NRC reports or nutrient requirements, that get us into this area where it is really going exponentially increasing. And right now, on average in the US, we probably have about 8,000 to 10,000 kilograms per cow per year. And if we extend that, we could easily get by 2050, we could easily get up to 15,000 kilograms per year. I mean, we do have enough genetic variability in the herd to actually go much higher, and by some estimates, probably going up to 25,000 kilograms per year. We have cows right now that produce 32,000 kilograms per year. So we still have that ability to continue to increase these gains. And what what that means is that we have greater feed efficiency, and we will have lower greenhouse gas emissions per kilogram of milk that we are producing. Those cows are larger cows because you need larger machinery or larger ability to make sure that you're making more milk. And so what we've seen over the last few years is an increased maintenance requirements per unit of body weight. But so this is basically from this graph, what I wanted to get is that we still have a way to go in increasing the productivity of dairy cattle. And to put this into perspective, so we've done some calculations and compared over the last 50 years what has been the impact in emissions, and particularly in emission intensity. And what we've seen is that in the 1960s or so, we had a total emissions of about 2 kilograms of CO2 equivalent per kilogram of energy corrected milk, and that goes down to about 1.16 kilogram of CO2 per kilogram of energy corrected milk. So we've seen huge gains in feed production, particularly because of now we have less inputs and more yield. Farm management also reduced. Enteric methane went down by more than half, and that is because the amount of milk that animals are producing now is much more than over 50 years. So as we increase the amount of milk produced, we also reduce the enteric methane per kilogram of milk. So this has gone overall. We've seen a reduction of 45% over the last 50 years. If I had to do this again, we'll probably be even lower now. We've done quite a lot of, we've used technologies, and we built anaerobic digesters. Over the last few years, we built 118 anaerobic digesters in California. So this number would probably be over 50% now if we have to do it again. And then this figure shows the comparison in production versus methane intensity. On the left side is the amount of milk yield and the x-axis, and on the y-axis is the methane emission intensity. As you can see that as you increase the amount of milk yield per year, so as you get into 6,000, 8,000 to 10,000 or so milk per year, then the intensity goes down as well. So there's actually almost 10-fold differences in methane intensity in production systems with high compared to the low. The same thing with meat production as well. So as you increase the amount of gain per animal per year, then you also reduce the intensity. And so some of the things that needs to be done, and what we're doing is developing ration formulation software in low-income countries where there are some improved breeds, but the way to feed them and how much to feed them, and so basically ration balancing is not there. So we're putting together a ration formulation software with the using the languages that people are using in that specific context, and for the different breed as well. So this will help in improving the productivity, which means reduce the methane intensity as well.